Hello and welcome to the Strong Suit Podcast, where we focus on the people part of your business. Every single episode, I feature a world-class expert on talent and recruiting so that you can build a company filled with rock stars. And I am so pumped and delighted to have a special guest today who is the president and CEO of a very fast-growing, newly venture capital funded software company, SaaS software company, I suppose. And we're going to talk with Natalie Steck about her business called Viewpath. Let me tell you a little about Natalie and the company. So Viewpath is based in Seattle and about 10 to 15 employees. We'll talk with her about that. It is a leading provider of a really heavy-duty solution when it comes to project management and resource management. So these are Fortune 1000 companies that use the Viewpath applications, all cloud-based, of course. Company was founded in 2007, and Natalie joined the company recently as president and CEO, where she joined from Chorus Software. So with all that set up, welcome, Natalie, to the show.
Thank you so much, Jeff. Really appreciate being here.
So excited to have you on, and would love to just start with the 60 seconds of how you came to join the business, how you came to join Viewpath. Obviously, it's been around about, 10 years or so. What was it that led you to become part of the team as CEO?
I think the thing, in the 60-second version of this, the thing that led me to the business most of all was really having such a fantastic, viable product in the market, but really needing some leadership in the business with sales and marketing expertise. So my prior 2 decades worth of global sales and marketing experience really is what started the conversation with Viewpath. And then my ideas about taking the product to market, how I feel about the people in a business and leading those people in the business really is what put me in the CEO position today.
Fantastic. Well, congratulations. Obviously, that's not a small feat to accomplish. So let's talk a little about the product and the company, and then we're really going to spend obviously the most part of our time on the people part. But obviously, project management, resource management, the category's been around a while. What is it about Viewpath that is differentiated? Why is it a successful business in a relatively active category?
It is an active category, and thankfully there hasn't been one dominant player that's really taken over the lion's share. We started many years ago really as an alternative to Microsoft Project. And what I mean by that is the true project managers, the deliberate project managers, they need features and functionality outside of, just where they currently are working, Excel spreadsheets, etc. And so the one thing that's emerged for us as being a unique selling point is our resource and capacity planning. Not just having the ability to see everybody on your project, whether they're on time, on schedule, within budget, but as you're setting up tasks within a project, for the system to be able to suggest to you the right resource based on their skill set.
Got it.
Really helps in that end-to-end project management.
So a consulting firm could use this, for example, to assign or at least recommend who's available, who has what expertise, et cetera.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. Project management companies, you think about the realm of who is managing a project. And even if you don't term it that way, everyone in business is managing a project. So it has a far and wide reach.
That's right. We're all in sales and we're all managing projects, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. So now with that set up, let's shift to the people part of the business. Just for context, how large is Viewpath in terms of people?
So you're right. There's about 10 or 11 of us. We do have some external contractors in that number. So we are small but mighty in terms of our FTE team members.
Mainly based in Seattle?
The head office is Seattle and will be built in a broader extent here in Seattle, but we do have some team members in Kansas, which help us manage sort of the time zones of being on Central Time.
Got it. So I'd love to talk about, as I mentioned, you've raised some venture capital funding recently. A lot of times that means a company is going to expand its team or upgrade its team. Is that the case for the business now?
That is the case for the business, yeah. We will be looking to expand the team who's responsible for building the product and then expand the team who's responsible for taking it to market, so sales and marketing. So
makers and shakers both.
Exactly.
Good. So give the audience a sense of the hiring process. You don't have to walk us through every step, but I'm really focused on are there any unique steps in the hiring process, perhaps that you're going to bring with you from Chorus that you found worked well?
Yeah, sure. Look, it's quite funny because when you do get VC backing and you do put out that press release, you get contacted by a lot of recruitment companies. That is the highest volume of inbound email I get each day is,
Yep.
surely you must be building a team and surely you need my help. The flip side of that is we're still a small company. We're a seed round of funding. We don't have an excessive amount of money to put towards recruiting. So a big part of another reason why I'm in the organisation is because I love to recruit. I love the people part of the business. And I love to be able to build a model for the specific organisation. I think that's really what I did at Chorus and what I do here at Viewpath. Because so many times, especially in the realm of sales and marketing, people hire people based off gut feel.
Yeah.
And that can often go dreadfully wrong. It has gone dreadfully wrong for me.
The science says 50% of the time it's going to go wrong. Your gut will mislead you. What's an example that comes to mind? You don't have to name names, but what's an example for the listeners of a situation where you relied on gut feel and the hire just turned out to be not a good fit? What was it that you missed?
So I think in a few organisations ago, we very much hired, we used to call it PLU, people like us. And we figured that the people in the business currently were really successful. And so if we just had more people like us, we would be more, that success would multiply.
Yep.
But working with people each day, day in, day out, there has to be a likability factor. But there are so many other criteria in which to be successful in that role. So I think that's really where, since that mistake, since we hired people like us who, we like them, we love hanging out with them, we love going to dinner and talking about this and that, they weren't very successful in getting the criteria of the role done because they weren't tested on that through the interview process.
So what have you learned to do differently to overcome or to avoid falling into that trap again?
Yeah, I have a really strict criteria of recruitment now. And I have to do that because I'm very much a people person. I'm that person, we've just gone through this series of interviews, and I'm that person that wants people to feel comfortable in the interview process. So most interviewees walk away and they say, that was a great interview. And then I'm the one who has to call them and say, you didn't get the job. And so I have to make sure that I consciously pepper my natural ability to want people to be comfortable, to want people to love this company as much as I do, with the strict criteria of success. And so to do that, we have to not only build out a clear job description, but we have to build out the recruitment process that answers the questions of, can this person do that job?
So is that done through traditional interviews, or are you using some other methods of assessment other than interviews?
It's mostly done through interviews. I'm currently looking for a senior technical lead / architect. And so I have issued them with a technical exercise that I get them to do. That's not just to measure their technical chops, but it's also to measure how they think, how they approach problem solving. There's other criteria that I'm measuring in there.
Yep.
But generally speaking, it's through the interview process. And I'm building criteria around things that we tend to not measure in a quantitative way. So things like, are they coachable? What's their level of intelligence? I'm looking up here on my board at the moment because they're running through this process at the moment.
Yep.
What's their level of curiosity? Which ties
These are much more hardwired DNA things than, do they know Java? Do they know C++?
Precisely. And so people often say, look, I want a cultural fit. I want a skill-based fit. But what I've seen happen disastrously previously, people have the skills and ability and the years of experience that you require, but they're not coachable at all.
Yeah.
And I'm coming into the business to shake it up and turn it upside down.
Yeah.
And you want to allow me to teach you a new way of doing things. So one of the criteria that I love, that I stick to, regardless of seniority of the role, is, are they coachable?
So how do you assess that? You can't ask a candidate, are you coachable? You know what the answer is going to be. So how do you assess that?
So I usually assess that through the interview process, where we will ask them, let's say it's a sales and marketing candidate, and we'll get them to do a pitch. When they do their pitch, we provide feedback. During the pitch, we're doing a role play scenario. I see how they take on that feedback.
So you're actually giving them feedback to see how they take it.
Yes.
And
exactly.
not to drill into it too much, but what are you looking for? How do you know when they're smiling at you that they're not thinking, I cannot believe she's saying these things, versus smiling and thinking, wow, I am so grateful that she's giving me feedback. How do you really know?
Usually what we do is we give feedback at a point in the presentation where they then have the ability to change their direction of their pitch or implement the feedback that I've given.
Got
And
it.
so that means they listened, they heard what I was saying, and they're willing to try something new. And that's a very uncomfortable environment to try something new. But they're the ones who are really wide open and coachable in my mind.
And you probably want them to push back a little bit if they disagree respectfully, so that you can see that they also have a spine, right? They're open to feedback, but they're not just a piece of jello that expects you to tell them what to do.
Yes, I can be terribly bossy. So I don't want everybody, I don't surround myself with yes people, that's for certain. I surround myself with people who have strong opinions. And I want those strong opinions. I want them to either take on my feedback and change their approach, or say, you know what, I've been in this scenario. Here's an example where I didn't do it that way and it worked out for me. So it's a bit of behavioural based as well as sort of the scenario based testing of that criteria.
I assume that before you extend an interview, you do some kind of reference checks. What have you learned to be some of the best practices for you when it comes to reference checking that you could share with the listeners?
Reference checking is just one of those things. No one ever lists a bad reference on their resume. Nobody ever sets you up. Although I have had one experience where a gentleman gave a reference and the referee said, I can't say anything good about this candidate.
Wow. He gave that reference.
He gave that reference. So I appreciated how candid and honest. Look, I think a lot of the information that you're going to gather about a person other than what they're telling you and how they're portraying about you is partially through the reference checking process, but also partially through your own research. You know, everybody's on LinkedIn, you know, everybody has sort of references. There's a bit of back channeling. It's sort of why I love Seattle so much. It's quite a small town scenario and someone knows someone who knows you.
How do you do so for folks that don't do this, I agree with you, of course, backdoor referencing is incredibly valuable. How do you do it? Walk us through, you know, how you do backdoor references.
It's difficult. It's difficult if you don't have a network of people surrounding you where you've got your six degrees of separation. But what you'll find is most people are really willing to, even in a blind reach out. If you look on their LinkedIn profile, you can sort of gather by their title and by their position, who they've worked with previously. You obviously don't want to touch their current employer in any way in case they don't know that they're departing. But you're able to gather enough information, and it might just be a casual reach out. Hi, what can you tell me about Jeff? You know, you've known him previously. But it doesn't have the formality around proper reference checking, but you often get some great anecdotal feedback about that candidate. And anytime I have done backdoor reference checking, I've just been so thrilled with the results and response, and it's almost always led to an offer.
Far more useful than front door references, the ones that they give you.
Absolutely.
Let's switch gears for the remaining time and shift from recruiting to retention. So keeping the great, 10, 11 folks that you already have. What are some of the, things that you lose sleep about when it comes to retention? You're competing in Seattle with amazing companies that people might have heard of for talent, and you assume that their phones ring, but they don't take the calls, or they do take the calls, but they stay anyway. So how do you drive retention when you can't afford to pay more than Amazon or Microsoft?
Yeah, retention doesn't keep me up at night, which is a good thing. I like to think that I have built a culture in every business that I've been in that attracts candidates. And like you said, we're in Seattle. We are literally doors away from the big boys, and who have lots of money to throw at candidates, who have lots of benefits to throw at candidates, just what we can't as a business of our size. And so what I try to bring to the business is, all the things that everybody tries to bring: the culture, the work-life balance, the fun environment. I like to think it's a fun environment that we work in. But what I also like to bring to all of my team members is my no surprises policy. I don't like surprises unless, they're, chocolate and flowers. And I don't expect them to like surprises in their job. And so what we try to do in any organisation I've been in, but in particular here at Viewpath, is to make sure that you understand your role, and they're big roles. As you can imagine with the team so small.
These are big jobs, right?
You're doing everything, you know, you're a jack of all trades. But to understand the role that you come in to do, to understand the expectations, to understand what I'm presenting to the board and the investors, and to have that open and transparent work environment, I find the people who I attract to this business aren't looking to be a cog in the wheel of a bigger business.
It almost self-selects because of the size of the business.
It definitely does. It definitely does. The people in Viewpath today are ones that fundamentally care about the business, and they want to make a huge impact. They don't want to be a small part of a bigger process. They want to be the process. So it is sort of a natural selection.
Got it. So you don't stay awake at night worrying about retention, which is great. What have you found to be the key drivers of retention? And I guess the way I would ask that is, when a rock star comes to you and says, I've got an offer, I'm going to leave. And it doesn't have to be at Viewpath, but just over the course of your career, what did you miss? What, in hindsight, do you look back and say, oh, if only I had done this, beyond just giving him more money?
Yeah, I really got to think about that question, because you know, so many, I make this joke for those that know me, who I've worked with and worked for and managed. I still have one-on-one meetings with sales team members from back in Australia, you know, who come to me for sort of that mentorship and guidance. Every company I leave, I have a group of people who say, can we just keep our one-on-one? I don't work here anymore. I don't work with you. So, I think that's a very people way of saying that leadership matters above all else. You know, that people say, there's lots of studies out there that say people leave jobs because of their boss.
Sure. People don't leave jobs, they leave their boss.
There's
another way of saying it. Right.
Exactly. And I think even over the course of my career, which is why I'm struggling to find an example for you, is people have stayed with me. Right. People have moved companies with me. People have sort of come with me. And look, that's not to say I haven't lost team members. You know, I've lost team members that I didn't want to lose.
Sure.
But I'm also a firm believer of nobody stays somewhere forever. I should be pouring into this individual and mentoring and leading this individual in a way that makes them hugely successful wherever they are. And that philosophy really has given me great retention of team members, as well as great return of team members. You know, they've gone on to do something else.
Come back and come back. So I appreciate your candor on that. So does that mean that because people leave their manager, right, not the company, does that mean when you, as the CEO or a senior person, have a mid-level manager who is not a great manager, how do you deal with that? Because you must know that their people are at risk.
Definitely. I think leadership is the biggest risk for any business. Obviously, we've got a pretty flat structure here at Viewpath with the number of team members we have here, but that hasn't always been the case. And I think it really does come down to clearly understanding. I'm very much a numbers person. I'm very focused on numbers, but I'm focused on structure and boundaries. And I think if people have a really clear understanding what's expected of them, you can manage those people to those expectations. And that comes into leadership as well. I've had several conversations, you know, with prior team members who say to me, I want to be the senior manager. I want to run the sales team. I want to run the marketing team. Why aren't you putting me in that position? Right. And I've got to have that really open conversation to say, here are the 6 reasons why you don't make a great leader.
Right. And do you see that as you don't make a great leader, or you're not ready yet, which is typically the case between those two?
I've seen both. To be honest, I've really seen people who should never lead other people very much desire to lead other people. And then I've seen, you know, the latter there is a great scenario for me, because I love to mentor. I love to see people with the potential to be a great leader, but they're just not there yet. It still doesn't make the conversation any easier when you come to me and said, I want to lead this team, I'm ready for it. And I have to say, you're about 2 years away.
Well, that assumes they have the DNA at all, right? Because it's so cliche. But
Mhm.
most companies promote their best sales rep to be VP of sales, and those skill sets are completely
I
diametrically
have
opposed.
a fundamental problem with what you've just said. It's like the opposite of who I am as a person, because every company I've met with, every company I've either come into, it's he or she did great selling last year. She smacked her target out of the ballpark. So that's now your VP of sales. And like you said, that is not your VP of
Yeah,
sales.
it almost never works. And then you
It's
got a real
almost
problem, because do you demote the person back to their sales role, which obviously leads to a lot of hard feelings? You really can lose your best salesperson in a situation like that, which is just a shame.
I think that's the really fine line, is keeping that top salesperson, retaining that top salesperson, knowing that they don't want to sell forever. They want to move on and do other things, but either identifying that they have management and leadership DNA and mentor that into them over the course of time, or have that hard conversation. And I have actually interviewed for an organization who had that hard conversation with one of their head sales guys, who said, listen, you're going to make a ton of money if you keep doing what you're doing, but you're never going to be leading anybody. He had to have that reconciliation process.
It's not an easy discussion to have.
No.
Well, look, Natalie, this has been fantastic. How can people learn more about Viewpath or get in touch with you?
If they go to our website, they're going to see our wonderful app. We are right on the verge of launching Viewpath 4.0, which has fantastic features and functionalities in it, especially capacity and resource planning and reporting. So on our website, they can take a look, they can, do a demo, they can
Great.
take a tour, and contact us through the website, through viewpath.com.
Thank you so much for making the time today.
Awesome. Thank you so much.